experimental thinking. And I don't need to say why again. It's simply the application of scientific method to everything. And so he talks of naturalizing epistemology. In fact, to this day, you've come across books and philosophical articles about naturalized epistemology. And the idea of naturalized epistemology really begins with Dewey, you see. He wants an epistemology which, rather than prescribing how we should know, instead of a prescriptive epistemology, he wants one which describes the nature of inquiry, if you like, in its natural environment, which is the practical demands of concrete experience. Naturalized epistemology. Which means that epistemology is going to be descriptive of the way in which inquiry operates according to the theory of natural selection. So the evolutionary thing informs what he's doing. Accordingly, he embraces the operationalist view of scientific concepts very explicitly. In 1925, Percy Bridgman, the Harvard physicist, had published a book called The Logic of Physics, in which he had developed the operationalist view, which I think had been hinted at by others before, but it was Bridgman who developed it systematically, and Dewey adopted it. Operationalism is simply the view that the meaning of a theoretical concept in science has to do with what is empirically observable when you perform certain operations. It's an operational meaning, an operational definition. You see, an operational definition. Yeah, we find all the time in talking about how we should go about things. People will come up with theories, with proposals, educational theories, curricular ideas, and the question is, how do you operationalize it? You see. The same is true with political policy. A candidate might come forth with some wonderful idea, and then somebody asks, now how are you going to operationalize this? Now you see at work here is the pragmatic theory of meaning, William James. Because if you want to know what a theoretical concept means, you ask, what are its practical consequences? What happens when you operationalize it? So operationalism is simply an application of the pragmatic theory of meaning to philosophy of science. You see. The example that I like is from mineralogy, where Mohs hardness scale, that is to say, talking about the hardness of minerals, the concept of hardness, Mohs hardness scale supposedly tells you about the hardness of minerals, at least the relative hardness of one mineral in comparison with another. That's all it does tell you. Why? Because in that operation of using Mohs hardness scale, what you do is to rub two minerals against each other. And the one which leaves a mark is by definition harder than the one which is marked. So what is hardness? Relative scratchability. That's an operational definition of hardness. It's not telling you what hardness does. No, take it back. It's not telling you what hardness is. Nothing at all about the essence of hardness. It's about what hardness does when you perform a certain operation. So operationalism then in philosophy of science. And this obviously is akin to the instrumentalist view of science. Instrumentalism is the view that science isn't telling us about the nature of reality. It's simply giving us useful knowledge that we can use for further inquiry or for developing applications of science. Now, you ask science majors why they go into science, why they're going to have scientific careers. You'll find an awful lot of them will say, well, because of what I can do with it. You see, not just earning a living, but doing medicine, doing engineering, doing environmental work, and so forth. The applied science. Now, instrumentalism is saying that this is really what science is about. You see, scientific theories shouldn't be taken to tell us about the nature of reality. Scientific theories are simply useful instruments for what we call applied sciences. Now you're getting there into the question of what's the relationship between theory and practice. Theory and practice. And the way some people talk about a liberal arts education, you'd think that education was of purely instrumental value, not concerned with the real essence of things, what it is to be human, what's the nature of reality. You see. So instrumentalism is regarded as a version of anti-realism in science. You see, scientific realism is the view that science tells us about reality. Scientific anti-realism is the view that science does not tell us about reality. And Dewey is one of the main contributors to scientific anti-realism, in that sense. But notice his reasons for that. Knowledge is a function of a biological organism adjusting to environment. In adjusting to an environment that poses problems, you don't need to know about the essence of reality. You don't need an excessive bundle of theory. All you need is some ideas about how to resolve the problem. And so rather than talking about traditional formal logic, he speaks of experimental logic, the logic of experimental thinking. He has a book entitled Logic, which has no syllogisms in it. Logic is about experimental thinking, you see. He has a little book, very pop level, How We Think. which really says how we think at this pop way, this problem-solving way. All right, you're driving along the highway. Problem situation. There's a farm wagon pulling out of a side road ahead of you onto the road. What are you going to do? Ideas flash through your mind. Brake, number one. Swerve, number two. Get off the road altogether, number three. Throw up your hands and hope the airbag opens, number four. You know? Now, in normal behavior, no sooner do those ideas come into your mind than one of them looms large as the thing you're going to do. Why? You draw on funded experience. Yeah, you have a whole fund of experience from having driven for a while. You see? From past episodes. You extrapolate to this one. So what you do is to jam on the brake and swerve and get off the highway all at once. You see? Now, maybe some situations where you really have to experiment with the ideas. And he tells of a case where somebody is going for a job interview. The path leads through a wooded area, across a bridge over a creek, and thence into town. Well, the guy gets to the bridge and finds it's broken down, it's out, no bridge. What's he going to do? If he goes back and around by the road, he'll be late for his job interview. If he works his way upstream in the hope of finding another bridge, that's a possibility. He experiments in his mind with that, mental experiments. Let's see, how far is that other bridge up there? How long would it take me to get there? And then when I've gotten over to get back, and okay, mental experiments. Other alternative is to try a long jump across the creek. Yes, sir. Well, he's not sure if that'll work, so what he does is to practice a few long jumps on the side and to see how far he can make. And do you think that'll do it? Well, let's try anyway. You see. And experimental confirmation. What is an idea? You see, you come up with an idea. What is an idea? It's not some representation, some copy in secondary quality terms of some primary quality object. No. An idea is a hypothesis. It's a plan for action. Tentative. You see. And you draw on past experience, you experiment with it to see if it'll resolve the problem. And a good idea is one that works. How do you make it work? By putting it into action. What is it to verify? Verifaction. Verification is making it true. You make it true.